Ambassador Dongsu walked through the crystal halls of Station Harmony for what he knew would be the last time. His black diplomatic uniform felt heavy on his shoulders as he made his way to the council chamber. 3 years of talks had led to this moment, and he could feel the weight of every insult and every dismissal that had brought them here. The council chamber was a massive dome made of living crystal that changed colors based on the mood of the speakers. Today, it glowed a harsh red that hurt human eyes. Dongsu took his seat at the small human table while the other species sat at their grand platforms that towered above him. This seating arrangement was deliberate and designed to make humans feel small and unimportant. High Counselor Velthara of the Vorthak Empire stood first. Her purple skin gleamed under the crystal light, and her 4 arms gestured dramatically as she spoke. Her voice carried the authority of someone who had never been told no in her very long life. "We have gathered today to discuss the human problem," she announced. "For too long, we have allowed this violent species to participate in civilized discourse. They bring chaos wherever they go, and their aggressive nature threatens the peace we have built over thousands of years." Dongsu remained silent as other council members voiced their agreement. The Zephyrian representative nodded his large blue head while his tentacles writhed with excitement. The crystalline delegate's body chimed with harmonic agreement that sounded like breaking glass. "The evidence is clear," continued Velthara. "Human colonies expand too quickly. Human traders undercut established prices. Human explorers venture into territories they have no right to explore. They show no respect for the ancient boundaries and agreements that keep our galaxy stable, Captain." Sora sat beside Dongsu and watched the proceedings with growing anger. She had fought in 3 border conflicts to protect alien worlds from raiders and pirates. She had seen human soldiers die to save Zephyrian children and human medics work around the clock to help crystalline refugees. None of that seemed to matter. Now Engineer Tae Ho operated the recording equipment from his position behind the main delegation. His fingers moved quickly across his tablet as he documented every word and every gesture. The humans had learned long ago to keep detailed records of everything the council said and did. Furthermore, Velthara continued, humans refuse to accept their proper place in the galactic order. They demand representation equal to species that have existed for millions of years. They question decisions made by their betters, and they constantly push for changes to systems that have worked perfectly for millennia. The Hegemarch of the Stellar Collective spoke next. His mechanical voice echoed through the chamber as he listed human crimes against galactic civilization, human refusal to share certain technologies, human insistence on maintaining independent military forces, human reluctance to fully integrate with established trade networks. Dongsu listened to each accusation and felt his patience finally reach its limit. These were the same beings who had refused to help when the Outer Rim faced invasion 2 years ago. The same council that had blocked human relief efforts during the Zephyrian plague. The same leaders who had voted down every human proposal for improved safety standards that could have saved thousands of lives. "The motion before us today," announced Velthara, "is to restrict human expansion to their home system only. Humans will be allowed to maintain their existing colonies, but no new settlements will be permitted. All human military vessels will be limited to Sol system patrols. Human trade ships will require escort by council-approved security forces when traveling outside human space." The vote was swift and predictable. Every species voted in favor except the humans, who were not allowed to vote on matters concerning themselves. The result was announced with great ceremony, as if the council had just solved a major galactic crisis. Dongsu stood slowly, and the chamber fell silent. Even Velthara stopped speaking to watch the human ambassador. His weathered face showed no emotion as he looked around the room at beings he had tried so hard to work with. 3 years ago, he said in a quiet voice that somehow carried to every corner of the chamber, humanity came to this council with open hands and open hearts. We offered our knowledge, our strength, and our friendship to help build a better galaxy for all thinking beings." He paused and let his words sink in. Several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "We have been patient when you called us primitive. We have been understanding when you dismissed our ideas. We have been forgiving when you blocked our efforts to help others. We believed that given time you would see that we wanted the same things you claimed to want. Peace, prosperity, and safety for all." Captain Sora watched as Dongsu gathered his papers and closed his briefcase with deliberate care. "Today you have shown us that our faith was misplaced. You do not want partners or allies. You want servants, and you want humans to bow down and accept whatever scraps you choose to throw our way. You want us to be grateful for the privilege of being ignored and insulted by species that claim to be our superiors." Engineer Taeho finished downloading the last of the session recordings. 3 years of negotiations and diplomacy were now stored in human databases. Every weakness revealed, every strategy discussed, every moment of alien arrogance had been carefully documented. "We refuse," said Dongsu as he picked up his briefcase. "Humanity withdraws from these negotiations immediately. We withdraw from all council agreements and treaties. We withdraw our cooperation and our assistance. We are done." The 3 words echoed through the chamber like thunder. "High Counselor." Velthara opened her mouth to speak, but Dongsu was already walking toward the exit. Captain So-Ra and Engineer Tae-Ho followed their ambassador as whispers and confused chatter filled the space behind them. The walk to their ship felt longer than usual. Station Harmony was a marvel of alien engineering that brought together the best technologies from dozens of species. Humans had contributed to its construction and had helped design many of its systems. None of that mattered now. Their transport ship was a modest vessel compared to the massive flagships of other species. Human engineering focused on efficiency and reliability rather than impressive displays of wealth and power. The crew was already preparing for departure when the delegation arrived. As they lifted off from Station Harmony, Captain Sora looked back at the crystal structure that had been her home away from home for 3 years. She wondered if any of the aliens inside understood what they had just lost. She doubted it. Engineer Tae-Ho was already transmitting their records back to Earth through quantum communication channels. Every human colony and outpost would know what had happened within hours. The age of cooperation was over, and something new was about to begin. Dongsu sat in his cabin and stared out at the stars. Behind them, the alien delegates were probably celebrating their victory over human stubbornness. They had no idea that they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. 2 standard years had passed since the humans walked away from Station Harmony, and the galaxy seemed to be doing just fine without them. Trade routes that had once required human escorts now flowed freely under Council protection. Systems that humans had claimed as buffer zones were being developed by species with proper galactic citizenship. High Counselor Velthara reviewed the quarterly reports with satisfaction. The Vorthak Empire had expanded into 3 new systems without having to negotiate with stubborn human colonists. Mining operations proceeded without interference from human environmental concerns. The galaxy was finally running as it should. The Zephyrian Collective had moved quickly to fill the gaps left by human withdrawal. Their tentacled merchants now dominated trade routes that humans had once protected. Commander Yethkin led fleets into sectors where human patrol ships had maintained order for decades. Everything was proceeding according to the Council's grand design. Admiral Kyung-ho stood on the bridge of the Earthship Independence and watched the last human vessels return to Sol System. The recall had taken 18 months to complete as ships traveled back from the furthest reaches of human space. Each returning vessel brought reports of abandoned stations and evacuated colonies. What the aliens did not know was that humans had not simply run away and hidden. Dr. Yunbi worked in laboratories deep beneath the surface of Mars, where the brightest human minds focused on projects that would have amazed and terrified the Galactic Council. Technologies that had been shared freely with alien allies were now being improved in secret. The Terra Defense Initiative operated from facilities that did not appear on any official records. Human engineers who had once built stations for Galactic. Cooperation now designed weapons and defenses that could protect humanity from any threat. Every insult from the Council had been recorded and studied to understand exactly what humans were dealing with. Commander Jinnu led reconnaissance missions along the Outer Rim, where human colonies had supposedly been abandoned. The truth was far more interesting than simple evacuation. These worlds had been transformed into something the galaxy had never seen before. Self-sufficient fortress planets that could survive without any outside support. The colonies did not look abandoned from space. Automated systems maintained the appearance of normal activity, while the real settlements moved underground or into hidden locations. Orbital platforms that seemed empty actually housed sophisticated monitoring equipment that watched every ship that passed through local space. Engineer Min Su worked on projects that pushed the boundaries of what humans thought possible. Fusion. Reactors that could power entire star systems, manufacturing facilities that could build anything from raw materials found on any world, defensive systems that made previous human military technology look like Stone Age weapons. What impressed him most was how quickly humans adapted when they were not trying to accommodate alien concerns. Projects that had been delayed for years, while waiting for council approval, were completed in months. Technologies that aliens had declared too dangerous were refined and perfected in secure facilities. The Sol system itself had become a fortress that few aliens would recognize. Asteroid mining operations that had once supplied materials to galactic markets now built defensive platforms. Space elevators that had carried trade goods now lifted military equipment. The humans were preparing for something, but nobody could say exactly what. Captain Boram commanded one of dozens of monitoring stations hidden throughout human space. Her job was to watch and listen to everything happening in the galaxy beyond. Human technology had always been good at gathering information, and 2 years of focused development had made it extraordinary. The data that flowed through her station painted a picture that would have worried the Galactic Council if they had known about it. Pirate attacks were increasing in areas where human patrols had once kept order. Trade disputes between alien species were escalating without human mediators. To find compromise solutions, border conflicts that had been prevented by human diplomacy were starting to flare up again. The Crystalline Hegemony and the Vorthak Empire had competing claims to mineral-rich systems. The Zephyrian Collective was having problems with raiders who attacked their expanded trade routes. President He Wan received daily briefings on Galactic affairs from her office in Geneva. The reports showed a galaxy that was slowly coming apart without human involvement, but she felt no satisfaction in being proven right. Too many innocent beings would suffer before the alien leaders realized their mistake. General Wu Jin commanded the Sol Defense Fleet from a station hidden in the asteroid belt. His ships were unlike anything humans had built before. They incorporated technologies that had been theoretical just 3 years ago, but were now proven and reliable. The fleet could defend human space against any known threat. What concerned him more were the unknown threats that human monitoring systems were detecting. Deep space sensors picked up energy signatures that did not match any known alien technology. Something was moving in the galactic core, and it did not appear to be friendly. Dr. Yunbi studied the sensor readings in her laboratory on Europa. The patterns reminded her of historical records from the early days of galactic civilization. Ancient texts spoke of a species that consumed entire worlds before disappearing back into the darkness between stars. She hoped her analysis was wrong. The human colonies that had supposedly been evacuated were actually more active than ever. Scientists and engineers worked on projects that would have been impossible under galactic oversight. Agricultural specialists developed crops that could grow in any environment. Medical researchers found cures for diseases that had plagued alien species for centuries. Commander So Young led training exercises for human forces that had never existed during the Council years. Soldiers who had once served as peacekeepers, between alien factions now prepared for conflicts that might determine the survival of civilization itself. Their equipment and tactics evolved rapidly without alien observers to limit development. The galaxy beyond human space was beginning to show signs of strain. Trade networks that had operated smoothly for millennia were developing problems without human maintenance and protection. Pirates and raiders grew bolder as they realized that human intervention was no longer a threat. Mining operations in unstable systems began to report accidents and equipment failures. The crystalline hegemony had pushed their expansion too quickly without proper safety measures. Three-star systems now showed signs of gravitational instability that could spread to neighboring regions. Meanwhile, the humans watched and waited and prepared for what they knew was coming. Every alien transmission was monitored and analyzed. Every ship movement was tracked and recorded. The species that had dismissed humanity as primitive had no idea how thoroughly they were being observed. Engineer Tejo had spent 2 years upgrading human communication and intelligence networks. Information flowed between human worlds faster than ever before, while remaining completely invisible to alien detection systems. The humans knew more about galactic affairs than the council members who claimed to rule the galaxy. Captain Sora now commanded a ship that bore little resemblance to the vessels she had flown during the council years. Human engineering had advanced dramatically without the need to make alien species comfortable with human capabilities. Her ship could travel farther and faster than anything in the galactic database. The final irony was that humans had become more unified and focused than ever before. The Council's rejection had eliminated the political divisions that had sometimes weakened human efforts. Every human world and every human citizen understood that they were part of something larger than themselves as the second year of isolation ended. Admiral Kyung-ho received reports that confirmed what many humans had suspected. The galaxy was heading toward crisis, and the alien species who had rejected human help would soon discover exactly what they had lost. Captain Bo-Ram was monitoring deep space transmissions from her hidden station when the alarms began to sound. Her screens filled with energy readings that should not have existed anywhere in known space. The signatures were massive and moving. Fast toward the outer edges of galactic civilization, she ran the data through every analysis program in the human database, but nothing matched what her sensors were detecting. The energy patterns were organic but far too large to be any known life form. Ships, maybe, but unlike anything built by any species in the galactic records, Bo-Ram transmitted the data directly to Earth through quantum channels that could not be intercepted by alien technology. Within minutes, every human monitoring station was focusing their sensors on the same region of space. What they found confirmed her worst fears. Something ancient was awakening in the galactic core, and it was hungry. Admiral Kyung-ho received the alert in his command center deep in the asteroid belt. The readings matched theoretical models that human scientists had developed based on fragmentary historical records. The Devourer swarm had returned after 10,000 years of hibernation in the darkness between galaxies. He immediately ordered all human forces to highest alert status while maintaining complete communications, silence. The aliens who had dismissed humanity as primitive were about to face an enemy that could destroy entire civilizations. The question was whether humans should warn them or let them discover the threat for themselves. Meanwhile, the Galactic Council was dealing with its own growing problems that had nothing to do with ancient threats. Trade disputes between major species were escalating into actual violence for the first time in centuries. The careful balance that had maintained galactic peace was falling apart without human mediation. Counselor Yethron of the Zephyrian Collective stood before the emergency assembly and tried to explain how 3 of their major trade routes had been completely shut down by pirate attacks. The raiders were using tactics and equipment that suggested coordination by someone with detailed knowledge of galactic shipping patterns. High Counselor Velthara listened with growing frustration as report after report detailed failures and problems throughout the galaxy. Mining accidents in crystalline space, border conflicts between the Vorthak Empire and smaller species, communication breakdowns between alien governments that had worked together for thousands of years. What none of them wanted to admit was that humans had been the glue holding their civilization together. Human diplomats had prevented conflicts before they started. Human traders had maintained fair prices that kept everyone profitable. Human peacekeepers had dealt with problems that were too small for massive alien fleets, but too dangerous to ignore. President Haywan read the intelligence reports in her secure office beneath the Swiss mountains. The galaxy was experiencing exactly the kind of breakdown that human analysts had predicted when they were excluded from council decisions. Every problem could have been prevented with proper planning and cooperation. The irony was that humans were in a better position than ever to help, but the council had made it clear that human assistance was not wanted. Haywan had to decide whether to offer aid to species that had treated humanity with contempt, or to let them solve their own problems. Dr. Yunbi worked frantically in her laboratories to confirm what the deep space sensors were detecting. The biosignatures matched theoretical models of the Devourer swarm that had nearly destroyed galactic civilization before the current council species had even evolved. These creatures consumed entire worlds and converted the biomass into more of themselves. Her analysis suggested that the swarm had been dormant in intergalactic space for millennia, but something had triggered their return. Perhaps the increased energy output from expanded mining operations or the gravitational disturbances caused by recent stellar engineering projects. General Wu Jin reviewed defensive preparations while hoping they would never be needed. Human space was as secure as current technology could make it, but the Devourer swarm had capabilities that defied conventional understanding. They adapted to every weapon used against them and learned from every encounter. The hidden human colonies were already implementing emergency protocols developed during the 2 years of isolation. Self-sufficient worlds that could survive without outside support were humanity's best hope. If the galaxy fell to the ancient threat, Commander Jin Wu led scouting missions to observe the edges of human space where alien activity was increasing. Refugee ships from the outer systems were fleeing toward the galactic center as reports of attacks spread through unofficial channels. Most of these ships were turned away at human borders according to standing orders. The refugees carried stories of entire worlds going silent without explanation. Colonies that had existed for thousands of years simply stopped communicating. Military patrols sent to investigate never returned. Something was systematically destroying the outer rim, and moving steadily inward, Captain So Young analyzed the tactical situation from her command ship hidden in the Kuiper Belt. The alien fleets that had once seemed so impressive were poorly equipped to handle an enemy that could adapt to conventional weapons. Their rigid command structures and ancient tactics would be useless against creatures that evolved during combat engineering. Teams led by Tae-ho worked around the clock to develop countermeasures against theoretical Devourer technology. Human weapons development had advanced dramatically during the isolation years, but these enemies had defeated civilizations that were far more advanced than current galactic species. The crystalline hegemony was the first major power to officially request assistance from the Galactic Council. 3 of their mining systems had been completely sterilized by unknown attackers. Mineral-rich worlds that had supported billions of crystal beings were now lifeless rocks drifting in space. Hagemarch Zilthon transmitted desperate pleas for military support to Station Harmony, but the Council was paralyzed by political arguments. Each species wanted to protect their own territory first, and nobody was willing to commit forces to defend someone else's holdings. The Vorthak Empire tried to maintain order through military force, but their fleets were designed for fighting other technological civilizations. Against an enemy that consumed metal and converted organic matter into weapons, the traditional advantages of the Empire meant nothing. Ambassador Nara of the Zephyrian Collective found herself in the impossible position of requesting help from the only species that might be able to provide it. The humans had been dismissed as primitive warmongers, but their military technology had always been surprisingly effective. She composed a message to President HFY that would have been unthinkable just months earlier. The collective was officially requesting human assistance in dealing with the growing crisis. Every diplomatic protocol was being abandoned in the face of Galactic Emergency Engineer Min Su monitored the quantum communications networks that connected human space to the galaxy beyond. The flow of information painted a picture of rapidly spreading chaos as established governments lost control of their territories. The Council's grand civilization was collapsing faster than anyone had imagined possible. Dr. Hye-jin studied biological samples that had been recovered from the edge of the affected regions. The organic matter showed signs of fundamental restructuring at the molecular level. Whatever was causing these attacks could literally rewrite the basic building blocks of life itself. Commander So-ra received orders to prepare her ship for possible evacuation missions despite the official policy of non-interference. Human leadership was quietly debating whether to maintain isolation or risk everything to save alien species that had rejected their friendship. Admiral Kyung-ho faced the hardest decision of his career, as reports confirmed that the Devourer swarm was definitely moving toward the galactic center. Human space would eventually be threatened, but they had time to prepare defenses. The alien civilizations did not. The galaxy that had celebrated human withdrawal was about to learn exactly what they had lost. The first visual confirmation of the Devourer swarm came from a crystalline research station at the edge of the galactic spiral. Dr. Velmar transmitted images that defied comprehension before his signal cut off forever. The creatures were living. Ships the size of moons with hulls that pulsed like beating hearts, and weapons that grew from their flesh. High Counselor Velthara stared at the recordings in the emergency council chamber as reports flooded in from across the outer rim. Entire star systems were going dark as the swarm consumed everything in its path. Planets were stripped of all organic matter while metal and minerals were absorbed into the creatures' growing bodies. The Vorthak Empire mobilized its grand fleet, under Admiral Kethaval, who had never lost a battle in 3 centuries of service. His massive dreadnoughts and escort carriers represented the finest military technology the galaxy could produce. Against the Devourer swarm, they lasted exactly 47 minutes. The bioships adapted to every weapon fired at them. Energy beams that should have cut through their hulls were absorbed and converted into stronger armor. Explosive missiles were caught and digested before they could detonate. The creatures learned from each attack and became more resistant to future damage. Counselor Yethron watched his species' greatest achievements being systematically destroyed. The Zephyrian trade networks that had taken millennia to build were collapsing as convoy after convoy disappeared into the growing darkness. Colonies that had existed since before recorded history were simply erased from existence. The Stellar Collective tried to negotiate with the swarm using every known form of communication. The Hagemarch sent mathematical formulas and scientific data and philosophical treatises explaining the value of peaceful coexistence. The creatures responded by consuming the messenger ships and adding their technology to their own capabilities. Ambassador Nara sat in her private chambers and composed the most difficult message of her long diplomatic career. 3 years ago, she had voted to restrict human expansion because she believed humans were too aggressive and dangerous. Now she was preparing to beg those same humans for help against an enemy that made human military capabilities look gentle. Her message to President HFY was transmitted through secured channels that bypassed the official council networks. The Zephyrian Collective was formally requesting immediate human intervention in the growing crisis. She offered territorial concessions and trade agreements and political autonomy that went far beyond anything humans had originally asked for. President HFY read the message in her command center while watching real-time displays of the spreading devastation. Human monitoring stations tracked the swarm's progress as it consumed world after world with terrifying efficiency. The aliens who had dismissed humanity as primitive were learning what real monsters looked like. Admiral Kyung-ho convened an emergency meeting of human military leadership to discuss the impossible situation. Every tactical analysis suggested that the Devourer swarm could not be stopped using conventional weapons. The creatures adapted too quickly and grew stronger with each. Victory Dr. Yunbi presented her findings to the assembled commanders and scientists. The swarm was not just consuming matter for nutrition, but was actively incorporating the biological and technological distinctiveness of its victims. Each devoured species made the creatures more versatile and dangerous. Chief Scientist Min Ho revealed the existence of Project Phoenix to leaders who had security clearance above the highest official levels. Human scientists had been developing theoretical weapons based on the assumption that conventional military technology would eventually prove inadequate. The project involved technologies that pushed the boundaries of human understanding: quantum, disruption fields that could unravel matter at the subatomic level, biological weapons that could rewrite genetic codes faster than any organism could adapt, temporal displacement devices that could remove threats from normal space-time. The problem was that using such weapons would fundamentally change humanity itself. The galaxy would be saved, but the humans who emerged from the conflict would be as different from current humanity as humans were from their primitive ancestors. General Wu Jin studied tactical projections that painted a grim picture of the coming conflict. Even with advanced weapons, the swarm would reach human space within months. Every human world would need to be defended simultaneously against enemies that learned from every encounter. Commander Jinnu reported that several human colonies had been developing in complete secrecy for the past 2 years. These worlds had capabilities that would astonish even human leadership. Post-scarcity civilizations with manufacturing systems that could build anything from basic elements. The hidden colonies had been preparing for exactly this kind of existential threat. Their populations had volunteered for experimental procedures that enhanced human capabilities in ways that bordered on incomprehensible. Enhanced intelligence, expanded lifespans, and physical modifications that allowed survival in hostile environments. Captain So Young led reconnaissance missions to observe the swarm's advance toward the galactic center. Her ships used stealth technology that made them invisible to conventional sensors, but she was not certain it would work against creatures that adapted to new detection methods. The images she transmitted back to human command showed the true scope of the threat. The swarm was not just a collection of individual creatures, but a coordinated organism that spanned multiple star systems. Its behavior suggested intelligence that operated on scales beyond anything the galaxy had encountered. Engineer Taeho worked with quantum communication specialists to maintain contact with human forces spread across the galaxy. The swarm had begun jamming conventional communications, but human technology operated on principles that the creatures had not yet encountered. Captain Bo Ram detected the first refugee ships attempting to cross into human space. These were not military vessels, but civilian transports carrying families who had fled the advancing swarm. Her orders were to turn them away, but she found herself questioning those commands. The refugees included species that had voted to restrict human expansion. Just years earlier, Vorthak nobles who had called humans primitive, crystalline scientists who had dismissed human technology, Zephyrian merchants who had claimed humans were too violent for civilized society. President Haiwan faced the decision that would define humanity's future relationship with the galaxy. She could maintain the isolation that had made humans stronger and let the alien civilizations face the consequences of their choices. Or she could risk everything to save beings who had treated humanity with contempt. The tactical situation was clear to everyone with access to the data. The Devourer swarm could be stopped, but only if humans revealed capabilities that had been hidden during the years of isolation. The galaxy would learn that the species they had dismissed was actually the most advanced civilization in known space. Admiral Kyung Ho received authorization to begin preliminary deployment of human forces to strategic positions throughout the galaxy. The ships that emerged from hidden bases bore little resemblance to the vessels that had participated in Council peacekeeping. Missions, Captain Dong Hyun commanded the exploration vessel New Horizon as it conducted the first official human mission. beyond Sol system in 2 years. His orders were to establish communication with surviving alien governments and offer assistance under terms that would reshape galactic civilization. The message he carried was simple, but revolutionary. Humanity was prepared to save the galaxy, but the price would be fundamental changes to how galactic society operated. True equality between species, protection for all sapient beings, democratic decision-making based on cooperation rather than hierarchy. As the first human ships crossed into alien space, the galaxy began to understand that everything was about to change. Fleet Admiral Seong-min stood on the bridge of the Earthship Harmony's end as the human armada dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Vorthak system. Around him floated ships that seemed to bend the laws of physics with hulls that shifted. Between solid matter and pure energy and weapons that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, the Devourer swarm had reached the heart of galactic civilization and was consuming the capital worlds of species that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years. Bioships the size of small moons fed on the remains of the Vorthak Empire's greatest cities, while converting the organic matter into new horrors. High Counselor Velthara transmitted a final desperate message from the emergency bunkers beneath her homeworld's surface. Her proud species had been reduced to hiding underground while monsters devoured everything they had built over countless generations. She who had called humans primitive now begged them for salvation. Captain Yujin watched the tactical displays as human vessels moved into battle formation. The ships around her were crewed by humans who had undergone modifications that would have been impossible just 3 years earlier. Enhanced neural interfaces allowed perfect coordination between organic minds and quantum computers. The human fleet did not attack the swarm with conventional weapons. Instead, they deployed devices that Dr. Yunbi had spent 2 years perfecting in secret laboratories. Quantum resonance generators that could rewrite the fundamental forces holding matter together. The effect was immediate and stunning. Devourer. Bioships that had consumed entire fleets began to transform as their genetic codes were rewritten in real time. Living weapons became flowering gardens that drifted peacefully through space. Predatory organisms turned into harmless creatures that fed on stellar radiation instead of organic matter. Admiral Kyung-ho coordinated the fleet operations from his command ship while monitoring the swarm's attempts to adapt. The creatures tried to modify themselves to resist the quantum fields, but human technology operated on principles that biological systems could not counter. Commander So Young led fighter squadrons equipped with weapons that existed partially outside normal space-time. Her pilots used neural links that allowed them to react faster than any organic nervous system, while their ships moved through dimensions that the swarm could not perceive. The battle was over within hours. Creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for months were transformed into peaceful organisms that posed no threat to anyone. The bioships that had seemed unstoppable became living monuments to human scientific achievement. But the real victory was not military. Engineer Minsu activated communication networks that connected every surviving world in the galaxy. Human quantum technology allowed instant contact between civilizations that had been cut off from each other for months. President Haiwan addressed the galaxy from her headquarters on Earth, while images of the transformed swarm played on screens throughout human space. She explained that humanity had developed these capabilities during the years of isolation, but had hoped never to use them. The transformation technology could have been weaponized to destroy entire species, but humans had chosen to use it for healing instead of harm. The creatures that had threatened galactic civilization were now part of a growing ecosystem that would help restore worlds damaged by the conflict. Dr. Hyejin worked with teams of xenobiologists to study the transformed organisms. The former Devourer swarm was now producing compounds that could heal damaged ecosystems and restore atmospheric balance to worlds that had been stripped of life. High Counselor Velthara emerged from her bunkers to find human ships in orbit around her homeworld. The beings she had dismissed as violent primitives were using advanced medical technology to treat Vorthak civilians injured during the swarm attacks. She requested immediate audience with human leadership and found herself face to face with Ambassador Do Hyun, who had replaced Dong Su as humanity's chief diplomatic representative. The scene reversed their first meeting as she was the one who bowed and asked for forgiveness. The formal ceremony took place on Station Harmony, which had been rebuilt using human technology that integrated seamlessly with existing alien systems. Representatives from every surviving species gathered to witness the transformation of galactic civilization. Ambassador Do Hyun presented humanity's new terms for participation in galactic affairs. True equality between all sapient species regardless of age or technological development. Democratic decision-making that gave every civilization an equal voice in galactic governance. Protection for all thinking beings through cooperative defense. Networks that no single species could dominate. Shared scientific research that would benefit everyone instead of being hoarded by individual governments. Trade agreements based on mutual benefit rather than exploitation. The council members who had once voted to restrict human expansion now competed to offer concessions that went far beyond anything humans had originally requested. Territorial grants that doubled human space. Trade rights that made Earth the center of galactic commerce, but the humans were no longer interested in the same things they had wanted 3 years earlier. Captain Sora declined offers of military commands that would have made her the most powerful admiral in galactic history. She preferred to lead exploration missions that would discover new worlds for peaceful settlement. Engineer Ji-Hai activated the Harmony Network from her control center on Luna. The system connected every willing civilization in a web of shared knowledge and mutual support that made the old council system obsolete. The network allowed instant communication between any 2 points in the galaxy while providing access to combined databases that included the accumulated knowledge of dozens of species. Scientific discoveries were shared immediately, and cultural exchanges flourished like never before. General Wu Jin oversaw the transformation of human military forces from defensive fleets into exploration and rescue services. Ships designed for war were converted into mobile hospitals and research stations that could respond to emergencies anywhere in the galaxy. The former devourer swarm creatures had become an integral part of the new galactic ecosystem. They traveled between star systems carrying seeds and genetic material that could restore life to damaged worlds. The monsters that had once consumed civilizations now helped create new ones. Commander Jinnu established contact with human colonies that had been developing in secret during the isolation years. These worlds had become centers of learning where humans and aliens worked together on projects that pushed the boundaries of what anyone thought possible. Dr. Yeonbi published research, papers that revolutionized galactic understanding of biology and quantum physics. The technologies that had saved the galaxy from the swarm had applications for medicine and agriculture and environmental restoration that would benefit everyone. The memorial garden that Dr. Hai Jin tended on Earth contained specimens from every world that had been affected by the conflict. Plants and trees from dozens of species grew together in harmony, while monuments honored both human and alien lives lost during the crisis. The inscription she had carved into the central memorial became the motto of the new galactic civilization. Unity through understanding was the path that all thinking beings would walk together toward a future that none of them could have imagined alone. 5 years after humanity withdrew from peace talks, the galaxy had become something far better than what any council had created through millennia of rule by hierarchy. Species that had competed for dominance now collaborated on projects that benefited everyone. High Counselor Velthara served as coordinator for the Vorthak participation in galactic restoration efforts. She often spoke to young beings about the importance of recognizing wisdom and strength wherever they might be found, regardless of species or origin. Ambassador Nara established cultural exchange programs between the Zephyrian Collective and human colonies. She had learned that diversity of thought and approach made civilizations stronger rather than weaker, when cooperation replaced competition. President He retired from active politics to write memoirs that became required reading for diplomatic students throughout the galaxy. Her account of humanity's patient response to rejection and insult became a model for how advanced civilizations should handle conflict. The galaxy that emerged from the crisis was united not by force or political maneuvering, but by shared understanding that all thinking beings had value and contributions to make. The humans who had been dismissed as primitive had shown everyone what true civilization looked like,